Guten Gardening, everybody. Today I'm going to take you on a tour of my Zone 5 garden here in southern Wisconsin. I'm going to show you what we've got growing so far here in the middle of June. Now, while my primary focus is going to be on that garden tour, there is something I want to talk about, and that is weeding. Now, we're going to start our garden tour today here with some of our garlic, which is looking great, and actually our hardneck garlic here in the back. You can see one of my favorite aspects of the hardneck garlic, which is all of these garlic scapes. And I did grow a little bit more, and certainly more varieties of garlic this year than I have in the past, in part because we got a new selection of garlic from Woodprey Family Farms. And since garlic is one of those longer lasting products and we use it almost daily, this is something we wanted to have more of this season. So you can see this year I've got garlic growing in the raised beds here, different raised beds in containers. And so we're hoping to get our biggest garlic harvest ever. Now, to talk about weeds today, I'm going to go to our primary in-ground gardening area. And actually, I'm going to start right behind the garden space where we have our onions growing, because this is an area where you can really see part of the issue with weeds in our back area that we're dealing with. You can see some of the varieties are common varieties. And so some of them, if you wanted to, you could eat. Does anybody know what this one is? I've actually done a video on this one. Some of them, if processed, and I'm not going to touch this stinging nettle, you can also make a stinging nettle tea out of. If you wrote down lamb's quarter, you got it right. But what you see here are some of the really common plants that grow, really common weeds that grow that can take over a space just so quickly. You know, about 2 weeks ago I came out here and I cleared out all these weeds, and unfortunately I hadn't been able to get back in here and really take care of these weeds the way I want to. And so what I'm seeing is, even in our primary garden space, actually I'll go down to this end of our garden space because you'll see it down here as well. In addition to some beautiful plants in here, I've got a ton of weeds down in this area that seem to pop up almost overnight. And I actually just discovered a hole in my fence over here. And the reason I discovered that hole, looks like one of my S clips has fallen off, is because I saw some rabbits in here. So I got to take care of that, or else the rabbits will come in and they'll eat up everything. So I'm going to come back here with my onions and show you I've started to do some work cleaning out this area, cleaning out the weeds in here. I've got hours of work left to do. Now, I believe all gardeners have to deal with weeds to some extent, but when you butt up to marshland, which is what I have right behind me here, an area that I can't do anything with, I have to deal with all of these plants out here going to seed and then spreading back into my garden. Now, there are a couple of different ways that we've handled our weeds here in the past, and most of the ways that we handle weeds have the additional benefit of helping to preserve some of the moisture in the soil, especially as we get farther into the end of June, into July, when the rain seems to be a little less frequent than it is at this time of year, again, here in Zone 5, Wisconsin. And so the first step is going to be to take care of the weeds, to get the weeds out of the way. And when we're talking about weeds around, say, the onions that you just saw, I'm gonna have to get in there by hand because I can't really do anything. You know, they're a little too close together for me to do anything else. So I get in there and I pull them out by hand. But for the main garden space, where I have a little bit more space in between most plants, I'll show you my way of getting rid of the weeds in the first place. And then we'll talk about trying to prevent them, and again, preserving some of the moisture in the soil. This area of the garden that has some broccoli and some pepper plants. These are actually habanero peppers, and some tomato over here by the trellising. I'm using one of my favorite tools. I've talked about this in previous videos. This is the Styropo, and what I love about the Styropo, I'm gonna be careful with my plants here, is that I can get in here and knock these weeds off right at the top without moving a ton of my soil around. So I'm not having to come back through and re-level everything out. I think this one cost me 25, 30 bucks. We certainly have other ones. You can get up pretty close to the plants as well. get real close to my vegetables. If there are some that are right by the plant, maybe I want to come in by hand, but that is a really easy way to knock these weeds down. Now what I could do is just repeat that process every week or week and a half or so. As new weeds come in, I get in there and I clear them out. Now there are plenty of other options for what you can do. We got a double shredded mulch a couple years ago. It wasn't too expensive. Actually, it was on the cheaper end of mulches. And from a local company, we got some double shredded mulch, and we spread about an inch thick layer across our garden space, and that made a huge difference. And it was double shredded, and it actually decomposed pretty quickly. So that's one of the things you can do. In the past, we've also spread a fairly thin layer of hay across the surface. Hay does a great job of holding moisture in. I mean, that's why our root stout bed doesn't even really need to be watered, because over the course of the season, it captures rain really well. Hay or straw works really nicely as a mulch. One thing with hay, you do want to make sure it's one of the later cuts if you can, to try to prevent additional seeds, because that can be problematic as well. But today, instead of hay, I'm actually going to be putting down a thin layer of grass. We just mowed yesterday. I've got some fresh grass in here, and I'm going to be spreading this out in a thin layer. Now, I don't want to make this too thick, although to be fair, the plants are really nicely established now, but I don't love the matting that happens or can happen with grass. I don't have this mulched up or anything like that. I just have a standard mower, but we found that grass does a really nice job also trying to keep that weed presence down. And I'm just going to create a thin layer around my plants. Again, I'm not trying to do anything except help hold moisture in. There we go, just like that. Help hold moisture in and keep the weeds down, because if I can prevent that additional piece of work, and I've talked about this before, but gardening takes a good bit of efforting, a good bit of work out here. And if you're adding work to yourself by constantly having to come take care of weeds, as much as I find taking care of weeds to be cathartic to a point, I have other things that I need to get done as well. And what I'm spreading out right now has only taken a small portion of one bag of our trimmings, our clippings. Yeah, that's going to be a huge difference maker, because as I walk along here, you can see what I'm going to be dealing with if I don't do this. These tomato plants, I got some Roma. These are Roma here. I got giant crimson, the rare giant crimson down here. A lot of kale this year, a lot of broccoli, cauliflower, or parsley right along here, but you can see how much the weeds are trying to really navigate into my garden, and I want to do whatever I can to prevent that from being a big issue. Again, I just cleared this out a week ago, and I've got bigger weeds that are going to come in. And the other piece of this that I think is so important to remember is, you know, I'm looking at my onions in the back there, but the weed competition means smaller vegetables overall, smaller plants. And I want these to be successful. Oh, you can see the rabbits came and ate a couple of my, these are butter beans, ate a couple of the plants right off the top there. But you can see how even, I mean, my peppers over here, you can barely see them because all this lamb's quarter here, that's all lamb's quarter, is just spreading so much. And as edible and delicious as I find lamb's quarter to be, that's not what I'm trying to grow in this part of the garden. So even if until I mow again, I have to miss part of our garden space, part of it covering over here, I'm definitely going to hit this corner of the garden with that grass to make a big difference. So the area where we've just come from on this tour, this is our main garden area where I'm doing the weeding, a lot of that work. I come around my house to the root stout bed, and up this corner, we've got our longest raised bed of potatoes. Everything's looking so nice. You know, a lot of these seed potatoes came in from Wood Prairie Family Farm this year. Some of the seed potatoes are ones that we kept over from last year. You see how deep the taproot goes on some of these. I really got to get that weed competition out of here for sure. I've walked along the western side of my house, so you can see the grapes here that I was just underneath, some of the berry bushes, all of our potatoes here. This is my favorite spot in our entire garden. I love this archway so much. I love the grapes that we've trellised over top. You know, we've got a lot growing here in our garden space, in our green stalks, etc. I've got a couple more beds here that I just tilled up. I'm ready to plant right here in the front space. I've taken out the weeds. I've still got to do this bed. I mean, again, when you're growing in a space like this, the weeds will try to reclaim a bed so quickly. And I haven't done anything with this bed yet. So, you know, once I take care of it, it's going to look just like these beds, or the bed here where I've got more broccoli growing, some more Romanesco broccoli, kale. That's our red Russian again right there. I think this would actually be a really cool place to end, right where we started, or right near where we started, because I haven't shown you two things. One would be our snap peas. And I have a couple different varieties. I just filmed a video yesterday when this particular pea was probably half the size it is now. They grow so quickly. You see all my peas here, and I've got some, let's look in here, there they are. Some purple ones as well, which taste so good. And I have to show you this potato area. I've got 4 containers of very vigorous growing potatoes here. 4 varieties that I'm not going to talk about today, but 4 of our favorites. And then our Sharpo Una and Sharpo Mira potatoes in our keyhole raised bed, which I am so excited for. The Sharpo Miras are phenomenal, and this is our first year with the Sharpo Una variety. Now there's plenty more I could show you that's growing here. Our raspberries are starting to look like berries finally. There's a whole lot more that I could talk about, but I think that's where I'm going to end it today. I hope that our conversation around weeding and what we're using here to cover the ground to mulch things in a little bit is useful. I think there are definitely some pretty inexpensive ways to do the mulching that'll prevent some of the problems with weed development in the future, and certainly again help to preserve some of the moisture in the soil, which I would consider to be really important. And I talked about this, but only briefly. You know, every single plant that grows in the same space as the vegetable that you want to grow is going to compete for nutrients with your plant. And so not taking care of the weeds is going to end up resulting in a plant that's not as healthy or not as good of a producer as you want. And so that's why I would say it's important to stay on top of it. And I know nobody likes to show off the weeds in their garden. I know that's certainly not a big focus for people who put their content on YouTube, but that's the reality of gardening, and it's something we have to address. Thank you once again to Let's Get Growing for allowing us to share this video with all of you. I wish you all the best. Have a great month.